So today, what we want to do is we are going to think about visualizing shapes in 3 dimensions in ways that will solve some of really difficult challenges of drawing slithering snakes and swimming curling fish. So anytime you take a shape and if it's straight, then if you're just looking at the side of the body of something, really easy to sort of visualize how you can draw it. And if it's got a lot of details on it, then that makes it more complicated. But the basic shape, we can wrap our head around that. But the minute that thing starts turning and twisting in space, things can get really funky and really weird. But if you know what to expect, and if you understand the way that these shapes turn and twist, then it is so much easier and even much more fun to be able to draw those shapes in space. So what I'm going to do is I made some Play-Doh, and you can go online and find all sorts of really great, easy, cheap Play-Doh recipes. Essentially, this is a wad of flour with a lot of salt in it and a little bit of cream of tartar. And then I just heated that in a saucepan until it turned into Play-Doh. And you can make your own Play-Doh just like that. So you can just go online and search, easy Play-Doh recipe, and you can make your own Play-Doh, because part of your homework is going to be studying from your own Play-Doh wad. All right. So let me I'm going to put this skull over on that side. Yeah, just sort of out of your way there. Here we go. I am going to jump over to this low angle document camera here. All right. And we are going to get to work. We're also, as you see, we are doing lunch, and so once you finish your lunch, then we can jump over to taking some sketch notes. But in the meantime, we'll watch along. I am going to take my wad of Play-Doh, and I am, Cameron, can you see okay? Great. So I am going to turn it into sort of a fish-like shape. So I'm going to roll it into a tube. Actually, what we'll do is we'll start just with the straight up tube, and we'll curl the tube. All right, so I've got a little cylinder here. There it is. All right. And what I want to do is to think about, I'm going to get this edge a little bit more tighter on that, okay? What I want to do is I want to think about drawing this from a few different angles. And then we're going to bend it, and we're going to draw it from a few different angles. And we're just going to notice what happens with this form. We're then going to turn this into something a little bit more fish form, and then we're going to get snaky with this. All right. So if I am drawing this, and I'll rise up a little bit here so that you can see my paper. There we go. Paper a little bit better. Just sort of thinking about drawing a cylinder in the simplest form, I've got a little oval top and sides that come down. And then I've got this same curve that is here. I'm doing that across the bottom there. So if I am able to see a little bit of the oval of the top, so you notice at this view with it, if I point this straight at you, you see a circle. I put it at an angle, you are seeing an oval top. You are also seeing a curve along the bottom edge here. So that oval, that circular bottom, when you look at it at an angle, makes, oops, can't have my hand in the way. So you notice I've got this curve down here and that curve right in here. But you already knew this. This is something that you've seen before lots of places. And if you are to visualize into this, then you know that what you've got going on is actually a full oval on the bottom and an oval on the top. It's just that if this is opaque, you're not able to see that line that is back there. So there is a little cylinder. But now we're going to have some fun with this, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this cylinder and I'm just going to bend it. All right. So I've just taken my cylinder and I've bent it. So now I have one surface out here that is extended or stretched, and I have another one on the inside right here that is contracted. As a matter of fact, it's all kind of wrinkling up on itself. And so when something curves, there is the contracted surface and the stretched surface. And so what I'm going to do, you might want to get out your journal so you can take those sketch notes. All right, so if I draw, that's right. Now, just like when you bend your elbow, it stretches along the outside edge of that. And on the inside, you could just make that like a macaroni, a little curve. But very often what you're seeing is that things are going to start to kind of bunch together and fold. And so rather than just macaroni, I am going to have a curved part out here. And on the inside, you can get these folds. And there's sort of a bent, curved little shape here. And that's right, sort of a blobby here. All right, so I'm going to put in here on this inner edge, kind of emphasize those little creases. And there is my curved shape. I'm going to pop this up a little bit higher so you can see that a little bit easier. And the pattern of kind of folds in here can be different depending on just sort of how the subject folds. You know, sometimes it might be just sort of one major crease in there. Sometimes two or more. So that's what I've got there, my extended side and my curved side. And what's fun to do is a sort of a great little doodle that you can do is just to make a curved shape and kind of around one part of that you can bend it, and you know you can try to sort of think of like how would you make different letters. So if I make an S, I've placed with two contractions right in here. And so you can sort of imagine a hose that is just sort of kind of kinking on itself and extending on the other side. All right. Now, let's take this and add some more kind of wrinkles and nuance to it. I am going to, instead of a cylinder, what I'm going to do is take my ball and I'm going to roll it into a tube again. But this time I am going to flatten it into more of a pancake, kind of square it along its edges. And I have a more rectangular blobby. All right, so here's my blobby. From the side, you see what I've done is I've kind of given it a few edges. Not perfect, but roughly we've got edges on this shape. Now, I'm going to take this and start to curve it. And we're going to notice what we start to see as it curves. And in particular, I want you to notice edges that are easy to perceive and edges that are challenging to perceive. So easy to perceive is this whole, look on this outside edge, right? I come around here, I come down here, right? We see that edge very, very clearly all the way to that corner there. Coming out here, where my tip of my pencil is, you're seeing this area along here, this area here as a very nice clean edge. And you actually see that clean edge continuing all the way back to here. So I've got this edge of this coming in here, nice and clean, but right about here, something interesting starts to happen. You notice that this edge, you can follow it to just about that point, and then exactly where is that edge from that point on, it becomes difficult to see. And see what's happening is because this thing is not a perfect cube with a sharp edge on it, kind of rounded, because of the angle on that, you are seeing a sharp edge here, but on this surface going along here, where is that edge? It's somewhere in here, but we're not exactly sure. As a matter of fact, instead of seeing an edge, all we're really detecting is a value change. This surface has more light, this surface is darker. So we see that value change. And this little phenomenon of where you go from a hard edge to a soft edge is going to be key in drawing curled fish and sharks and snakes. So I'm going to make a little drawing of this. Let's see if I put my journal down there. You can see it. All right. So actually, I'm going to have to, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask everybody to, right now, with this blobby on the screen, draw this as you would. How would you show this on your piece of paper? So make a little sketch of this. I'm going to give you about 45 seconds to make this sketch, so we're not going to get fussy with it. You want us to think of how would you show the structure of something like this. Now, I am going to move it, and all right. So I am seeing a top edge that comes over, it comes down. There is a curve, the outside of the curve here, and it comes down. I'm going to start just with sort of the easy edges. And this one I was seeing kind of come up to somewhere in there. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a hard line for a little bit and then just sort of let that peter out. All right. And the angle that you were looking at was something, I've lost the exact angle that it was. Something like that. All right. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come along in here, and I'm going to put a little bit of a curve in and go out to a rounded corner here. Now, this edge up here, the edge that so there's a few edges that are going to be, we're going to suggest them instead of full on showing them. We're going to suggest that there's an edge that is coming somewhere in here and coming down like this. And we're going to suggest that there is an end to this that is something like this. Sorry that mine is upside down for your view. All right. Now, for these sorts of these edges, if I draw a hard line on here, people are going to they're going to think of that as a sharp edge where two things are kind of coming like that. But I want them to think of this as a curve. So what I'll often do is, if you look in here at this part right in here, see there's a little bit of a bump, and that means that a little bit of a shadow comes slightly up in here. All right? And so places where there's slight bumps, depressions on the side of a subject will make an edge where the light of this upper surface, where there's a depression, on one side of that, it'll let the light in, and on the other side, it's letting the shadow up. So you see how I just took my little pen and I made a few little marks along the edge here. And what you're seeing is now kind of a zigzaggy sawtooth edge here. So what I will do often on something like this, when there's a sort of natural object that has kind of irregular depressions, but it's got a form, I will kind of make my line to sort of wrap around the up and down over that, around that edge. So you see what I'm doing is that sometimes I'm kind of coming up onto it and then dropping down. So what I'm doing is, instead of drawing a line like that over the edge of it, this is sort of that shadow line kind of coming up and down there. So if I did that around this side here, if I drop a little bit of tone in on this, what I've got is some places the shadow comes up, other places the light comes down. So I have an irregular sort of sawtooth edge there. And if I want to suggest this other surface coming around here, I'm just going to put a little bit of tone, a little bit lighter there. So what are a couple of key points so far? Number one is on this spot right in here. What I'm going to do is let this hard edge peter out into an indistinct line, and then I get to carry that line on with an indistinct edge that I'm showing by an intermittent up and down mark. If this were something that were milled and processed, you wouldn't have those little kind of divots and corners in them. But a lot of natural objects, you'll see a little bit of that effect. I also am using intentionally two values here. One value here in this darker area, slightly lighter over here. And by having a sharp edge between this value, and this value, you look at it and the object seems to have a little bit of form. Now, I'm going to move this to a slightly different angle. I'm going to make this even more curved. I'm going to get down low with it.
Jack, there's a little bit of static. I don't know if you have two audio inputs on.
Two audio inputs on.
Or if you have...
Let me see. So you mean static in my voice, right?
Well, there's just like a background static noise. Voice is clear.
Let's see. Let me try a different...
It's because Millie's coloring.
Oh.
Could it be the sound of a marker?
No, I don't think it's that. It's more of a computer sound. But some people are hearing it and some aren't. So.
Oh, so sorry about that, folks.
That's okay.
I'm not really sure what that is.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
All right. So now let's take a look at this again. All right. So when I say kind of hard edge, take a look at this edge here. Right? This edge here is, I'm going to move this up a bit. Up, no, not that way, not that way. I'm going to move it this way. Hold on, let me do just a second. There we go. There we are. All right. So this little edge in here comes up nice, and right here where my finger is pointing, this is a nice hard edge. This over here, we turn to a soft edge, and what you want to do is just sort of note the point in the middle where that change happens. And also notice that right in there, right where I'm pointing, there's a little slice of light that comes down, then a chunk of dark that comes up, a little slice of light that comes down. So right here on, we go from a straight line, we're going into that sort of softer, jaggedy edge. So if I, can you see okay, Colin? Oh, hey, macaroni writing, I like it. So I'm going to try to bring my journal in so that you can see my page at the same time. See if I'm drawing somewhere in, no, here's what I'll do. Turn it around this way. There we are. All right. So if I see an edge on the back end, it's all nice and blocky. On the side coming towards me, tucks down, go around. No, it goes down, doesn't it? And I'm going to come up, and then it's going to come in. And then somewhere in there it ends. You can either have your line just come out, you can have your line get lighter. Another thing you can do is with your line, have your line come around and put a dot at the end of it. Sometimes that just sort of gives the impression of a line fading out. All right. Then on this edge here, I'm going to just more now lightly with my pen, just kind of say that there's an edge here that is, I'm making my pen go lightly up and down from that point there. And this comes right in like that. Around here. There we go. So I'm going to put in a little bit of darker value in there. And I'm going to use a lighter value pen. And I'm going to come slightly around this end here. And do that. And I get the sense of this curling blob. Now, I'm going to take this blob and make it into a tube. So I take this, roll it into a tube, and so if it is just sort of lying there straight like that, no problem. We already know what to do with something like this. All right, I'm going to have an indication of this end. I've got two edges that are coming down. Because it's not curling and twisting, there's no real mystery going on here. But if I take this and I make it into an S, now things are going to start to get really interesting. All right, so when I look at it from above, all right, so sorry about the, where are we? No, not there. There it is. All right, so you look at it from above, all right, no problem. It's a little S, but the minute you start to look at it from an angle, these edges that are solid and then become a little bit more diffuse become much more important and interesting. I'm going to take a piece of paper here, or actually this little, I'm going to take this, and cast a shadow across it. There we go. When I put the shadow here, you can really see how that hard edge ends, and then you start to come around the corner to the soft edge. And similarly here on the other side, let me see if I can get shadow on this part. Yeah, I've got shadow on this edge coming around, and then what that edge does on that part of my S becomes confusing. So if I were to draw something like this, so I'm going to move this over here so if we can still see it well enough, and then get the journal in the foreground. Yeah, that'll work. All right. As I'm looking in the background at that big S shape, I am seeing a curved end and a curved side. And that curved side comes up, and somewhere in here, it ends. All right, so I'm going to go for a little kind of dot end. Then I'm going to come in here, come along with a clear end. Somewhere in here, this clear end gives up. So I'm going to give mine another little dot. And it takes up, and then start to see sort of the other side of it, this part in here, coming up, and over. This edge I'm going to have kind of a indistinct little edge there that's pointing towards me. But this bottom edge is going to tuck in here. I want to look at what is the edge that, what is the angle. These little negative shapes in here end up being really, really helpful in kind of drawing these curves. And now I'm going to just spend a little bit of time right in here and right in here. The next few little lines that I make are going to make a big difference in making this look right or not. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to suggest that there's a little bit of kind of curvy edge kind of coming around here. I'm going to suggest that right up in here, there is a, what time is it?
It's 12:35.
12:35. Okay, girls, you're good. I've got the alarm set off to go a little bit before you have to jump back to class. So if you hear that, you can go back. All right. Now, what I'm going to do is just with a little bit of value, try to sort of finally flesh this tube out. I am seeing that there is, in this area, there's a little bit of shadow, and I'm going to do this with my shadow. I'm going to tuck that shadow up into some creases right in there. Bring that shadow around for that side there. I am going to have my shadow here. It's going to be a lot of this surface here. A good strategy to think of is, where do you see light against dark? And where do you see dark against light? So if I bring the camera over the top of this, oh, it's not very focused, is it? Let me see. I've got my hand in the way. There we go. So places this spot right in here, and this spot right in here. This negative shape right in here and this negative shape right in here. Those are the key areas that we want to pay attention to. Let me show you another way of visualizing the changes in this shape. I want to take this and put it so that, okay, girls, one more minute. And so you both please, will you turn off the alarm on the stove and sign into your classes? All right, so this is where the cross section comes in. And what we're going to do is we're going to think about this shape in terms of what are we seeing in the cross sections of a curve like this. All right? There are some parts of this curve where the tube of the snake's body is pointing straight towards you. And there are some places where the tube of the snake's body is sideways to you. And you want to think of in your head where those go, where those are. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this right here. Amelia, please turn off the stove alarm. All right. So if you look here, as I've cut it, you see this, a cut that is in line with your line of view, making the edge of this, you're looking at the side. So when I cut this way, all right, and again, this is a cut that is just straight across the line of the body. All right, you are seeing part of the snake's body that is aligned like that. But if I were to make a cut over here, you would see a different thing. Here, you are looking at this end of the snake's body. So here you're looking at the side. Here we are looking at the end. So if a snake's body is curved and curling like this, on this end you're seeing them aligned like this. On this end over here, you're seeing them aligned like that. So what we want to do is imagine a series of cuts at different places along the body here. And let's take a look at the shape of the top edge of this one. We're seeing a curve. Let's take a look at the shape of the front edge of this. It's coming up, straight, and then it's curving on the top. And then when I put this back in attached to it, you don't see it anymore. You don't see this back side. So here I've got a curve across, here coming up straight, and then coming into a curve, hooking this direction. And this one here, you see it as just a thing going straight up, a line, a cut perpendicular to your plane of view. As I am sculpting my drawing, I want to think of these cuts and these planes. On a drawing like this one, let's pop up and turn down. Right. So if I've got, let's try this. Get into the middle of the field of view. No. That's closer. Better. That'll have to do. So eventually I'll get the geometry of getting the image in the center of the field of view figured out. But here's my little drawing. What I want to be thinking about is that I have a, depending on where I'm cutting this, I may have a line that curves around the top surface, like that, or I may have a line that cuts straight towards you, like that. And somewhere in between, it's going to start straighter, and then towards the top, I'm going to start to curve that. And then over here, it'll be a little bit more curvy. So straight, slightly curved, more curved, all the way curved. These are the contour lines that wrap slightly curved, more curved out here. Let's just put in a few more. Can you figure out what they would be in this area? What would those contour lines be doing? Here they've flipped and they're starting to reverse the other way. Because it's now coming towards you. What? Don't worry, we'll cut the Play-Doh in just a moment. You'll see that effect. So right here on this one that is pointing towards me, that's a straight line right there. This part here that's pointing away from me, that's a straight line right there. But if it's coming towards me, I have these lines that are like parentheses around it. But if it's curving away from me, they are reverse parentheses around it like that. Let's cut the Play-Doh.
So, Jack, there were a couple questions about the pen you're using, and then are you using like a couple different shades of Copic markers or something?
Yes,
like that?
I've got a couple of shades of, I've got a light and a dark Copic marker here. What are they? I've got a T0 and this is a T3. So two gray light ones. This other pen is just a ballpoint pen, and that purple was just a colored pencil, a mechanical pencil with colored lead in it.
Yavia and a few other people really like the pen and suggest that you do a cross-hatching workshop at some point in the future.
Will do. Love to do that. So I'm going to get this lined up so that this is pointing straight at you. I want that to be just a straight up and down line. All right, so this part coming towards you. And I got the big cleaver just for dramatic effect today. All right, so do you see how these ones here are making parentheses? These lines here and here curve towards, kind of cupping like parentheses, this line that is coming towards you right here. But out here in the back end, let me do another cut right here. If I do a cut right here, you also see that cut across the body as a straight line. But look at what happens if I cut these diagonal ones. You're going to see that they make a curve that curves the opposite direction, like reverse parentheses. All right, so you see how this makes a bulge that points in this way. This one makes a bulge that points in this way, so they're pointing in towards it. Here, on this one here, this makes a bulge pointing where the middle of it points away from the center line. These ones here, the bulge points towards that center line. So being able to, in addition to, see these shapes and negative shapes. Being able to to visualize and see these angles on these cross sections is going to also really help me be able to sculpt the patterns on my fish or my snake. Let's actually make this a little bit more of a, we're going to now, as a sort of last thing here, I'm going to take this and kind of go from, this is more what happens if you cut up the tube, but I'm going to turn this body into more of a snaky shaped body, and we'll see what happens then. Are there any other questions that have come up while I'm doing this, Brian?
No, I think it's been fairly clear.
Okay.
You're at 12:50.
Right.
Time.
So I can do this next step in under 10 minutes. All right. Really playing with something that you can manipulate in your hands. You remember our friend Mark Simmons talking about how much it helped him to be able to draw animals, to play with his little plastic animals, right? What we're talking about here is the idea of embodied cognition, that you're not just sort of understanding something with your brain, but you're understanding it with your hands, and your hands are connecting to your eye. So really doing something like this and playing with the dough, not just seeing it on a video, but making your own dough. And again, you just go online and do a search for, I made this in about 2 minutes with flour, salt, water, and a little bit of cream of tartar. So I'm going to turn the body shape here into a little bit more of a snake shape. So I'm going to make it a little bit more pointed along the ridge line, and more, so it's slightly more triangular. Not a full-on triangle, but slightly more triangular. There we go. Flatter on the bottom. All right, so in cross section, this is what I'm going for. All right, and maybe I don't want it fully that triangular, so I'm just going to give it a little bit of a roll. That's good. And what about this side? And maybe a little bit too triangular there. And good. All right. I'm going to take this and I'm going to make it into my S. So what I've got, if you look at a garter snake, it's very, very clear. They have a very prominent dorsal stripe. All right, so I am going to just sort of put a little indication of the center line of my snake here. Now, again, I look at this from the top. You can see I've put my center line in the center of my snake. But let's look at it from this angle. And let's look at what that center line is doing. Oh. The center line in here, in this part of the body, it's right up at the ridge, at the edge of where this disappears for you. So you're really looking at this side, you're looking at less of the top, and then it's cutting down the other side. All right, and let me bring this over more on this side here, curve it around. Actually, we'll do this. We'll just make a horseshoe. So things to note, I have clear edge coming in, and just about there it fades out. So I'm going to stop that line in there. And notice that my center line over here, it is running along the top edge. And then it is going to go out more to the middle and then swings back to the top edge again. See this, I'm going to smooth this part a little bit, get my middle line right, a little bit more symmetrical. There we go. All right, so I'm seeing it go along the top edge, swing around, or I see it more kind of going over the middle, and then over here on the edge. And this actually makes a lot of sense. Watch this. Sorry, snake. At this view, what you're really looking at is the cross-section of the snake's body with the center line going right up the middle, just like you would expect. But over here, you are looking at the side view of the snake's body with the center line at the top. And then somewhere in between is just something in between these two extremes. So this means when I go to draw my slithering snake, all right, I now am going to take my ball, get myself a nice longer snake. Again, get yourself a little bit of, make yourself some Play-Doh. What's the last time you got to do that? Hey, it's COVID, right? We can play with Play-Doh. We can be in our homes playing with, we've got an international pandemic. Go inside and play with Play-Doh. And if ever there was a rationale for kind of hiding away from the world and making something out of Play-Doh, I think we can use the global pandemic as a very good excuse for that. All right, so I am going to press this down, make it a little bit more V-shaped, all right? We have more of a center line on our snake, sorry about that. And what I'd like you to do, friends at home, is to carve this snake. All right? Draw this wad of Play-Doh. Actually, I'm going to make this a little bit more of a natural curve right here. That was a little bit harsh. There we are. There we are. And I'm going to put in a little bit of a center line. You try this at home. I'll try it here, and then we'll share our pictures in just a moment. See if you can get the suggestion of that triangular body in places like this. Remember, you're right here and here and here. You are looking at an actual cross section of the snake's body. Look at the negative shapes in here, here, and here. Those negative shapes are your friends. You see, I'm blocking in my negative shapes. I'm going to block in this negative shape, then the next negative shape, and I'll wrap the body around those. We're going to give this 2 more minutes. I know I'm going over time here. Let's just see if there are. I'll give you just a little bit more time. See what happens if you put in that center line with your drawing. This is where, at this point, I'm getting. About 1 more minute. Really helps to bring that center line just to the middle of the body on the corner, and then back over to the top, and then to the middle of the body, and then back over to the top. Middle of the body, back over to the top. All right. Let me show you what I have. Oops, not there. There it is. So I am looking at those negative shapes. Center line goes from the top edge, then to the middle of the body, to the top edge, to the middle of the body. Negative shapes in the spaces between, and getting these little moments here where that clean edge cuts in and then disappears. Clean edge comes in, disappears. My next step would be to put some value on that. Just notice how this whole area being a darker value, this whole area being a darker value, those would really help carve these shapes. And those are, I think, some really, try doing this. A few places, see if you can put those contour lines like we did on here. Throw some contour lines around your snake. Can you figure out what they would be doing? What would the contour lines be doing right when that body is coming towards you, where you're looking right at the side of the triangle? What about There's some contour lines on my snakes. It's a wonderful way to visualize. It's a wonderful way to think about hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed this show. I sure have had fun, and I hope you come and join us again. Yep. There is my Play-Doh serpent. Let me switch over to this. Hey, I think it's a wonderful way of practicing your visualization. And what you're doing is you're taking a three-dimensional shape. You know it's a three-dimensional shape. You can feel it in your hands. And then you're going to turn it around different directions. And you can, where you want to, you can get out your own cleaver, and you can go crazy and give yourself cross sections through your serpent without hurting anybody. And this is really, really powerful. What's happening is the more you do that, the more you are just getting this deep brain sense of this shape and how it turns, the different forms and angles. Look for those key areas. Again, you have what are your negative shapes? What is your angle doing here right where that hard line becomes the soft line? What's happening with the center line of your body? And what happens is you can then build a sinuous form. Otherwise, what you're doing is you're drawing a snake, and what you're doing is you're drawing two lines that are kind of twisting and going parallel to each other, right? And you lose all this form and this structure and this wonderful visualization. So this stuff applies to snakes, it applies to eels, it applies to fish, it applies to sharks. Anything with a sort of, where you think of kind of a long, think of a sort of a more tubular body, and it's going to bend, right? It's going to bend. These tricks come in. I like Heather's safety point. Snakes are not toys. They are living critters worthy of our respect. We treat them with respect and we treat them with dignity. Let's not have anybody in the Nature Journal Club ever chuck a rock at a snake. But this is, I think that these are really high percentage techniques for improving not just the way you draw snakes, but the way you visualize three-dimensional objects. I hope this was a ball.